Hello everyone. Before you start working on your projects for Sir Gawain and the Green Knight very much, I wanted to run through some things in the book so that they get more firmly in your mind and you can refer to these specific things. They show up in the study guide, but I thought maybe having them all pulled together in a presentation would be helpful. As you start on your presentation, we're going to walk through the 4 FITTs of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. We'll look at characters, topics that come up, symbols, events, and also expectations of the audience. The original audience would have been in the 14th century, the end of the 13th century in England. So remember that those people had specific things they knew and were looking for in their very entertaining long poems. So remember, let's move through quickly how writers develop characters, and you can mention these specific things as evidence if you're ever going to write about a character you did already. What characters say, how they say it, and the words they use. The words that they used were very important for these people, and so the way Gawain uses language shows how good a knight he is. What do other characters say or think about them? Reputation was very important, and so one thing that Gawain is, one part of his test is to uphold the reputation of Arthur's court. But we also learn things about him by the way people treat him and talk with him. What they do and how they do it. We learn about the Green Knight by how he talks to King Arthur's court and how he behaves there. He talks to them the way nobody does. What do others do in relationship to the characters, what they say or think about their own motives and attitudes, and what Gawain thinks of himself at the end of the narrative is very important. What the narrator says about them, how they change in their thinking, actions, and speech, and how they respond to events. And so really all of these things are part of Gawain's development. And we see that other people have a different opinion of him at the end of the narrative than he does of himself. So how does Gawain develop? What do we learn about him? What does the narrator say? What does he say? What does he do? What do other characters say and do about him and to him? And how does he respond to events? Symbols can contribute to a theme or idea. How do they do that? They can function to move the plot along. They make things happen. They appear in relationship to objects or characters, and they draw attention to certain objects, characters, events. They suggest or remind people of something, and they're associated with something in the story. So there are a number of important symbols. In fact, you could say almost everything in the narrative is a symbol, because the medieval people liked their symbols. Especially the Christians of the Middle Ages emphasized symbols. Everything was an allegory. Everything had a number of meanings, and so we see some significant symbols in Sir Gawain. So characters. FITT 1. We are introduced to Arthur's court. So there's King Arthur, Queen Guinevere, who's supposedly the most beautiful lady ever. Knights. Some knights are named later in the FITT. Ladies, but mostly we hear about generic knights and ladies and what they're doing. Of course, the Green Knight, and also, of course, Gawain. So there's Arthur's court, and it's supposedly the finest court. They meet all the standards, and standards are extremely important to the people in the Middle Ages, and reputation and the code of chivalry, and we'll talk more about that. So topics are the celebration going on for Christmas, and it's 2 weeks and a day, a fortnight and a day. Order itself, just that things take place in an orderly way. You'll find that the Christian year is very important. I skipped power. The power of the court, the power of Arthur, very important. The success of the court, as I mentioned, the Christian year was divided into a holiday or holy day about every month, if not more than one per month. So that was the way the people of the Middle Ages marked time. Most people were illiterate and books were very rare. Of course, clocks didn't exist. So the chiming of the bells in the church marked hours and sections of hours, I guess. And the festivals of the church marked the seasons and markers of the year. Fame. The fame of Arthur's court was important. He had enemies, and so he was always being attacked and slandered. Testing was important. And games. It takes place in a time of, maybe in your own families around holidays when the family gathers, when people gather and eat, they play games. In my family, we play cards, and there are other games too. New games coming up all along, but games are important, and games are a way of testing rules. Testing is important. Knights were tested for all their knightly virtues, their fairness and honor and honesty in battle, how they treated the weak and the victims, and those things showed if they were honorable or not. So FITT 1's symbols. The court itself is a symbol. It's a symbol of order, of honor and power. The Green Knight is a symbol. The Green Knight is green head to foot, and he seems to mirror the green man in folklore of that time, kind of a pre-Christian figure who symbolizes fertility, growth, vegetation. He brings in a sprig of holly, which was a druidical symbol, and a battle axe. So in one hand, he has the symbol of life in the middle of winter. They've just had the winter solstice, the shortest day of the year when things are darkest. And yet holly is bright green and red, a symbol of life. But he also has the axe, which is kind of like an executioner. So is he life or is he death? And that's one thing about the Green Knight. He's very confusing. So it's Christmas, big celebration, fortnight plus 1 day. They have tournaments, jousting, there's lots of laughter and hubbub and talking, and everybody's visiting and having a good time and catching up. There are presents. Arthur calls for a story and says, we're not going to eat until we have one. The Green Knight suddenly arrives and comes in on a green horse, green head to foot, green skin, green everything. And he challenges them to this beheading game. I will give me a stroke of my axe or an axe, and I'll give you one in a year and a day. So Arthur, everyone is stunned. No one does anything. And Arthur, seeing that the honor of his court is at stake, steps up and says, I'll do it. Gawain says, oh no, you can't do it. I'll do it. Though I'm the weakest and most unimportant of all your knights, I'll do it. So the outcome is that the Green Knight's head rolls. Gawain takes the axe and strikes him on the neck, chopping his head off. The head rolls across the floor, and kind of under the knight's feet at the table, and the body gets up and walks over, picks up the head, and the head says, "I'll see you in a year and a day. Don't fail. Your honor's at stake." So the expectations of the audience, they are expecting a good story, just like Arthur. They have high literary standards because these sorts of stories, romances, this is a romance, an Arthurian romance, are moving around Europe. People, troubadours and storytellers tell them, and so their expectations are high for a good story. They like formality. They like rules. They like everything to be balanced and symmetrical. So we can expect some numbers. We can expect order in the way the story is told and the poetry. So you'll notice that there is a pattern. It's called a bob and wheel structure for the stanzas. The stanzas are a number of lines, maybe 20 something, and each line has internal alliteration, repeated sounds, and then the last 5 lines are short of each stanza. The last 5 lines are shorter, and the first, third, and fifth rhyme. So a great deal of order and formality. The people, the listeners, the audience expects adventures because they've heard the stories of Arthur's knights and they know something about what a knight would encounter when he was on a quest. And they knew about courtly love. Courtly love was the system in which that came about in the context of a religion that said that sex was only for marriage. I'm sorry, sex was only for childbearing. And many of the marriages, or most, if not all of the marriages of the wealthy and powerful, were all arranged and for political purposes. So, people are people, and people will find a way to justify having some fun together. So, this idea that the woman in marriage was there to have babies, and so sex was only for babies. And so somebody came up with this idea that courtly love, that you could have a relationship with a woman and a woman with a man if it was a mirror of worship. The cult of Mary had come into favor, and the idea of the perfection of womanhood took hold. So it was this big game that a knight would fall in love with a lady who was not his wife. It had to be not his wife. It was based on adultery. And worship her and fulfill all of her desires, do anything she said and be her slave, basically. And then she would eventually grant him favor, meaning have sex with him. And they would have this ideal love that wasn't based on marriage. It was based on worship of one another, and particularly worship of the woman. So the audience then expected to hear some stories about courtly love, and courtly love plays a very large part, of course, in Gawain's testing. So the characters we get in FITT 2 are Arthur, Gawain, and the cream of Camelot, all the lords and ladies. Gringolet, his horse. I love that name. If I had a horse, I think I'd name it Gringolet. The pleasant porter that Gawain meets, nobles and knights in Bertilac's court, Lord Bertilac, Lady Bertilac, and an ancient dame who's also called an old crone. Symbols, you read an extensive description of Gawain's armor, the pentangle on his shield, which is very symbolic, sets of 5, the 5 joys of Mary, the 5 wounds of Christ, but primarily the 5 virtues and the 5 virtues of knighthood. Then Christmas itself is a symbol, and it's a symbol of life in the midst of non-life, cold winter. Gawain finds this castle out in the middle of nowhere, and there's a nice snug fire there, and we can see that as a symbol, the crone and the lady, the pair, and then the pact that Gawain and Lord Bertilac make. So the events, the Christian year has, the wheel has turned, and so all of the parts of the year have come and gone, and then in September, Gawain starts thinking about the challenge that he will have to fulfill. All Saints' Day, the 1st of November, comes, and then Gawain dons his armor, and gets ready to depart. The whole court is just heartbroken. They're afraid he'll never come back because obviously the Green Knight is going to take a swing at him. Then Gawain, there's this very short passage in which Gawain has adventures. He goes through England's realm to the north of Wales, and he encounters foes, serpents, wolves, wodos, whatever those are, bulls, bears, boars, and giants. Then on Christmas Eve, he prays because he needs to go to Mass on Christmas Day, the next day, and he prays for a place where he can do that, and the castle appears, and then he's welcomed to the castle with all the Christmas feasting. It sounds like Arthur's court from the previous year, and he meets this beautiful lady and her companion, the crone, and then he and his host make the pact. The audience would expect adventures. They would expect Gawain to behave perfectly because he's supposed to be this paragon of virtue and of knighthood. They would be looking for, the order and flirtation of courtly love, challenges, testing, games, then the food, the fun, and magic and complications that go with a good romance. All of those things should come in. The characters in FITT 3 include Gawain, Lady and Lord Bertilac, the crone, whose identity we find out later, late in FITT 4, the hunters, the dogs and greyhounds, deer, boar, and fox, if you can count them as characters. So the topics obviously include courtesy and love, honor, friendship, and testing. So Gawain's made this new friend in Lord Bertilac, but he's made a really close friend with Lady Bertilac. So symbols are the deer, boar, the fox, and of course the kiss. And this is a very old picture that is of Lady Bertilac and Sir Gawain. You can see the curtains around the bed. So here's another curtained bed. I just wanted to show that because she gets inside those curtains and hunts him down. So day 1, Lord Bertilac goes out to hunt, and they were hunting deer. They see the male deer, but they say they've got to let them go by, and they're only going to hunt the does. Gawain sleeps in and is tricked and trapped, as the lady says, when she comes in and snuggles with him. Gawain denies his identity and fights her off, and kind of parries her blows. But she does give him a kiss, and then we read about butchering after the kill, which is very interesting. After she kind of takes him apart, she's kind of dismantling him, trying to dismantle his honor, and then we read this complicated section of the details of butchering a kill. So the exchange involves Lord Bertilac gives Gawain the deer head, the trophy, and Gawain, of course, is supposed to give him what he earns in the castle, what comes to him, and he's gotten a kiss. So he kisses Lord Bertilac. So this is like, you know, men kiss other men, kiss on the cheek as a greeting kind of thing. Of course, some people talk about this being a bit erotic for men, but traditionally it's been read as men kissing one another in greeting. So they agree to go on with the pact the next day. So in FITT 3, day 2, Lord Bertilac gets up, goes to mass, hunting. He's hunting, and it's a boar, and it's a big, angry, powerful, dangerous boar. Very dangerous. Gawain sleeps in again and is really enjoying his Christmas vacation. The lady sneaks in and demands a kiss for courtesy. Gawain kind of wheedles out of doing anything else for her, though. So, yes, he sleeps in again. And Gawain then, after his lounging around and flirting, he hangs out with the ladies. And we find out that he and the lady are getting close. They're becoming enamored with one another, which just goes along with the idea of courtly love. There's more butchering of the boar. His host shows the slabs of meat to Gawain, and Gawain gives Bertilac 2 kisses. They flirt. The lady flirts with him some more, and then he and the Lord, Gawain and the Lord, agree to the pact again. So FITT 3 events. This time they're hunting a fox. Now, I don't want to think of the fox as like this cute little fox, but foxes, if you think of it, they're kind of smelly and they are scavengers in a way. And it's wily, it's tricky, and it slips away, but then it gets torn up by the dogs, basically. And that hunt is clearly mirrored in the lady's behavior to Gawain. She's more sexy than ever. She asks for a keepsake, and he says he doesn't have anything he can give her. And so she gives him a green silk girdle with gold edging. She says that it will protect the life of anyone who wears it. So it's enchanted, it's magic. So Gawain accepts it, and another kiss. And he goes to chapel and makes his confession. And then Lord Bertilac gives him the stringy fox pelt and asks and tells him, this is all I've got. I wish I had something better for you. He gives another kiss, Gawain gives another kiss to Bertilac, but he does not give the belt, the green girdle. He doesn't tell him about it, doesn't give it to him. So he withholds it and doesn't keep his bargain. So by the end of FITT 3, audience expectations are really high. Gawain has successfully avoided sleeping with the lady, but he has also not kept his word to the host. There's been this tension through the whole thing between Gawain needing to honor his host and respect his host and obey the lady according to the rules of courtly love. So how can he thread that, go through that maze, run that gauntlet, whatever. Will he tell the truth or not? So he has not told the truth by the end, and so the audience is going, ooh, what's going to happen when he meets the Green Knight? He's going to deserve a punishment. So they would be looking forward to, looking at the order, the whole game that's going on in the story between the flirtation and the hunting. They like the tension. They love reading the banter or love talk, and the hunting is cool, and the butchering is cool because, of course, everybody hunted. And so there's this poet obviously knows a lot about hunting, and so there's some expertise in these lines in the description. And the audience loves that, and they also like these cool lines with the alliteration. So our characters in FITT 4, as we go into FITT 4, Gawain gets up. Nobody else is up, but he calls for a servant who comes in to help him. He takes Gringolet. Of course, he meets the Green Knight, and we find out that's Lord Bertilac. Morgan Le Fay is mentioned, and we end up back with Arthur, the Knights, and the Ladies. The topics round out here. There's all the tension that comes with Gawain wanting to uphold his honor. He's also terrified. He has fear for his life. He goes into, when he feels a lack of control, and things seem disordered and chaotic. He doesn't know what to expect. So the testing is also a topic. Nature. Remember, the Green Knight symbolizes nature. Magic. We find out the outcome and where the magic came from and really what was involved. What did Gawain do wrong as a topic? His pride. And again, order. Order is very important. Symbols include the quest itself, the Green Knight, the Green Chapel, the 3 strokes of the axe, the green girdle, and the test. So events. The servant talks at the beginning and builds up the tension, saying he's talking about the Green Knight being the wildest man and how scared he is, and Gawain shouldn't go to the Green Chapel. Nobody should do that. Then Gawain forces himself to face the knight. He says, I'm going to do it. I have to. He goes into the valley, where there's this creek, the water, and he hears the sound of grinding up high. He sees something like a mound, a barrow, and there's kind of a cave in it. The knight taunts Gawain. You just don't do that to the knight, one of Arthur's knights. But the Green Knight goads him and taunts him, and Gawain gives it back. And then he steps up and he leans over with stroke 1. He flinches, and the knight doesn't bring down the axe. Gawain is experiencing just an innate response, an instinctive flinching because of the drive for survival. Then stroke 2, the knight looks like he's going to bring down the biggest wallop ever, and he stops. And then with stroke 3, he nicks Gawain's neck and brings blood. So each stroke stood for 1 day out of the challenge. The knight is actually Bertilac. Morgan had cooked up the scheme to dishonor King Arthur's court, so she enchanted Bertilac, sent him to the court, hoping to dishonor them. She uses her magic, and again, she uses her magic at the Green Chapel, or her magic is there, but we never see Morgan. So what it comes down to is that Gawain loved his own life, and that's what led to him lying. The knight says that he didn't do it out of disloyalty. He didn't do it out of greed because he wanted to keep the thing. He did it because he loved his own life. And loving your own life is very natural. So he dismisses that. That's not a problem. And the Green Knight says, "You're good, Gawain, no problem." Gawain says, "I have totally failed," even though the knight's forgiven him. And Gawain wears the belt back to the court and tells them his story and laments losing he thinks losing his honor in that way, but they don't think so. And they all wear such belts to honor him. And so everything is kind of wrapped up with a bow at the end. So think about how these elements fit together in your section. Which of them emerge there, and how does your section develop these ideas or move them along? And then what are you discovering that I didn't mention? What about poetic elements? How do the rhymes at the ends of the stanzas work? How do the alliterative lines work? If you come up with any, encounter any lines you think are particularly good or noteworthy, you can include those. Colors are important, right? Green, very striking. Green, and then the description of Arthur's clothes and armor and shield, all of those have color. So think about wording and themes and things like that. So next, reread the guidelines for the assignment and the rubric. You can borrow any pictures if you are doing a PowerPoint and you want to get them from this presentation and reuse them, you may. You can also find pictures in your research to use if you want. And you need to do some research about this. Find out about maybe more about the symbols, maybe more about courtly love. There's a good article on courtly love. I think I actually put it in our files on Canvas. Arthurian traditions, what's usually in an Arthurian romance. The Pearl Poet is the author of the text, and other topics. So do your research, create your presentation or whatever form you're going to do, and upload it. And I'll create some sort of forum or something on our page so that you can see one another's. Thank you.